Hello, everyone on Patreon. Thank you so much for voting this month. This video is dedicated to the bonus movie review of the month, and the winner this month is, drumroll please, Tristana from 1970. This was directed by LUIS Bunuel. It starred Catherine Deneuve and Fernando. And I'm glad this won because I always liked this film. I never loved it. I was kind of more iffy about it. I just thought it was okay. But I liked it a lot more this time. It's really involves the audience in interpreting the motives and the psychology behind the characters. Now, for those of you who haven't seen this film, I'll just read out the plot on IMDb here. Shortly after her mother's death, an innocent and youthful woman will find refuge into the household of her middle-aged aristocratic guardian who will submit her to his sexual advances. So what's interesting about this relationship is that it's complicated. And yes, as we saw, her mother died. So since she was very, very young, Fernando Rey's character, Don Lope, he was taking care of her. And so you don't see a lot of her early life with him, but you get a strong sense of a father and daughter relationship. She's loving towards him, but he is rather controlling. He doesn't let her out of the house very much. And he sort of makes his own rules, like you see him off the top, like he's very hypocritical in a lot of sense, because he's off the top, you see him, flirting with a woman with a baby, and you just outside, he just stops to flirt, come onto her, and you just get this sense that he's that there's something perhaps dangerous about him, or something sort of icky about him, that he would do that, something sleazy about him. And he has these sort of beliefs because he on the one hand, you see early on in the film a police officer running after someone, and they ask him, hey, where did that person go? And he points the cops the other way, and he says, I always defend the weak, and I never defend the strong. So he has this feeling for people with no money, even though he's quite wealthy. But he has this empathy and these feelings for people who don't have much and perhaps have to turn to crime and things like that. So I like that about him. But then at the same time, he's sitting around with his friends, and they're all religious. Everyone's religious, including him. And he says that the only commandment he doesn't agree with is what they said about sex. Basically, like, he feels that men need to be free and should sleep with as many women as they want to. So he's sort of, as he contradicts himself, but he's quite gentle with her. And he's it's an interesting performance from Fernando Rey, because he's never, throughout the whole film, he's never he's never yelling or brutal with her, or he doesn't seem threatening. He's very even tempered, and everything he does is just very, very subtle. I think there's a couple of instances where he does become more threatening, but he's certainly a complicated guy who contradicts himself throughout the film. But what he eventually starts to flirt with her and come on to her, and he begins to have a sexual relationship with Tristana, with Catherine Deneuve. And now he goes even, further with controlling her. And this is where his hypocrisy comes in, because he feels as though people need to be free, and that passion can never just be, between two people, that's why you have to have multiple partners. But yet he will not let her leave the house. And she eventually meets Franco Nero, who's this painter, and because she's feeling so controlled by her husband, and he's also the father. So, which is so strange. And every now and then he'll say, "Well, now I'm being your father," and so he has no problem with the fact that he's doing this. And they have a maid, and at first she doesn't want to tell. She thinks the maid's is not gonna like this because they have this father-daughter relationship, and he just says, "Well, she's gonna have to get used to it." So he just doesn't care. Like again, like he has no sense of embarrassment that he would do this to like take advantage of this young woman who you never really know whether she had any sexual feelings for him. You feel as though she was confused about her feelings for him because he had been so kind to her and had saved her in a lot of ways and took her in after her mother died. So, this is where it's ambiguous. How did she really feel about him? So when she begins to become attracted to Franco Nero, she wants to be with him, but Fernando Rey's character he becomes suspicious of where she's been going. She's been leaving for longer stretches of time, and he basically threatens he's going to kill her. This is the only time you see more of a menacing side come out of him. But again, it's such a wonderful performance because he's never. I think as an actor, it's always tempting to play those characters with such ferociousness, and everything he does is very simple and direct and straightforward. I think he just really trusted that if he does what the character does and is simple with it, that it will all of the sleaziness and contradictions of this man will come through. So that's the only scene where you see some edge because he gets quite threatening as they're outside when he threatens her. But she eventually runs away with Nero, and then they don't see each other for 2 years, and you see Fernando Rey kind of sink into a depression without her, and he's actually much grayer after 2 years. If you see in the early parts of the film, every now and then he's actually dyeing his gray beard black, darker, so that he's not looking older for her. And now he's kind of let that all go. And so this is where it gets complicated because she gets sick and she wants to go and live with him. And Franco Nero, who's now with her, is trying to talk her out of it. But if that's what she wished, she had a tumor in her leg. She was really unwell. And she goes, if that's what you want, I will bring you to Fernando Rey. And Fernando Rey takes her in. And he's so different. All of a sudden he's so generous. He's assuming the father role, and that whole husband role is gone. And he's so kind, so generous, so loving. And what's interesting with the way in which Catherine Deneuve reacts then to Franco Nero is she goes, "How dare you have brought me here?" She blames him. It was almost as if she was testing him. And he said, "Well, you wanted me to." And he goes, Don Lope would have never have let me go to another man's house. So again, I think she had these complicated feelings for this man who was her lover and father at the same time. And I can understand in this moment of really vulnerability and fear of dying that you want a parental figure, perhaps. So I think she wanted to go, but on the other hand, didn't. And then when she was now, actually, of course, she starts to get better. And so she blames it on Franco Nero. And what's interesting is that she starts to hate the Fernando Rey more than she ever did as she lives with him. They had to amputate her leg. She just is so distant, so cold towards him. He starts to, again, slowly try to win her over again, with her love over. Franco Nero basically disappears. He's out of the picture. There's a scene actually, and this is what was interesting with Don Lope is that when she's sick, what you saw of him before, I would have thought, the sleaziness was going to start to come back. But he actually goes to Franco Nero and asks him to come visit her because he's going to help her, but they had a fight earlier. So Franco Nero felt that he couldn't go to his house, but he said, "No, come, she needs to see you every day." So that's quite generous, even though Franco Nero had smacked him in the face in an earlier scene, when they were having an affair, and obviously Fernando Rey wanted to stop that and have Catherine Deneuve as Tristana come home immediately. So, Nero he's out of the picture. It could become so complicated, and she changes so much that the relationship ends, and you don't really see when or how that happened, but it's assumed based on what's happening with her and now living with Fernando Rey again. She's like a whole new person. Fernando Rey has really changed for the better in a lot of ways, but he begins to, try to be affectionate with her. She pushes him away, and then she marries him. But the only reason she marries him is because, again, these are religious people. So a priest tells her that you should marry him because you even, it's not, marriage is not all about procreation. It's, you also don't want to be living in sin. So, but she obviously believed that she was, and she couldn't live with sin, so she marries him. It's interesting that she would have chosen to do that, and she wouldn't have said to the priest, well, yeah, but he's actually like my father. We're not in a relationship. So again, it's this complicated relationship where I don't think she knew who he was. I think, if someone said, he's your father, she'd believe it. And then if someone said, no, he's your lover, he's your husband, she would believe that. So it's really open to what the audience feel about it and why she's doing this. But she feel as though she does. And at the wedding, they get married, and then he tries to like hold her hand and she just pushes him away. So it becomes just empty and ugly, and there's nothing between them. And ultimately in the end, he becomes really, really sick. He calls her in the night, says to call the doctor. He's getting older, and she only pretends to call, and then he dies, right? So obviously this is what she just hated him, for everything that he took advantage of her. He when she was young, he mistreated her, he kept her in, but then at the same time, he saved her in a lot of ways. She was an orphan. He took care of her. They did have some good times and some loving feelings towards each other. But what I was interesting about it is that there's no forgiveness. There's no conversation where he asks for forgiveness. Maybe that would have made a big difference. But I never got this. Because he changed so much, perhaps he felt that he was wrong, but he never, about a lot of things he did, but he never comes out with it. He never expresses that to her. So in a lot of ways, even though he's taking care of her again, he's still not making up for the things that he did that were so, so bad. And I think that's why she just resented him no matter what in the second half of the film. Which again is interesting. That they're also religious and they believe in Jesus, and Jesus teaches, of course, to forgive even without apologizing. Sometimes, and without confessing your sin. But she can't. She obviously couldn't find that, which I could understand why. I could understand why that would be very, very, very difficult. I don't think I could forgive anyone either. They'd have to beg me for their forgiveness to have confused my feelings and taken advantage of me when I was so young, to be with them. So it's a dark film. It's really sad, but it really centers around a lot of the themes of relationships and complicated feelings between men and women, and religion and hypocrisy and contradictions. And that, sometimes some things are, we have to say sorry. We have to fess up to things that we did wrong, and we have to express that. And if we don't, then your relationships are basically not going to be very good. And you really see that in the film. I thought that was really, really moving in a lot of ways, and it said a lot about the human spirit. Sure, it's a sad story, it's dark, but it really made me think about the nature of forgiveness and the need to apologize. And unfortunately, Fernando Rey, he never gets there with Tristana, even though I think on some level he knew he did a lot that was wrong, but it wasn't in him for whatever reason, and tragically. I mean, obviously, I don't agree that she didn't try to help him when he was dying, and she only pretends to call the cops. Um, so in a way, it's like she killed him, but you can understand where her murderous feelings towards him would come from. So it's such a complicated psychological film. Sometimes when I see a film like this, and I had seen it before, and I remember not being as fond of it, I remind myself that maybe I was probably not in a mood to do all this. This film requires a lot of work from the audience. You can see how complicated and contradictory it is, and it's not just feeding you simple motivations and simple plot points and simple answers. It's up to the audience to go to the film, and not that it's so confusing, but to experience it emotionally, and then really think about what is the film saying, what is it asking, what is it speaking to about the human condition. So I loved it. So I want to thank everyone for voting on it this month, and I will definitely plan to see more Bunuel. Thank you so much, everyone, again, and I will see you in the next video.